Hi, I'm Greg Campbell. I'm an actor and a director and a writer in Toronto.
I'm Clinton Walker. I'm an actor and a director, mostly a director these days, and I am directing Out.
It's a one-man multi-character show about a young man, Glenn, who in 1977 in Montreal comes out of the closet during the disco days, and he basically kicks the door down, and we see his journey of self-identification, and he goes to gay bars, he goes to a gay youth group, and he ends up with his two best friends in New York City at the Gay Pride March in 1977. I play 25 characters. There are about 5 main characters and then a lot of secondary and tertiary characters.
Dimitri told me about this gay movie that we had to see at the Seville Repertory Cinema. It's called The Boys in the Band. I loved this movie. At the end, the lead character, Michael, he has a breakdown and he says the line, "If we could only learn not to hate ourselves quite so very much." I get it. I know this feeling, the self-loathing. Glenn, you see that guy over there with the bad dye job and the roots showing? Stay away from him, dear. He is so full of himself. Well, of course I went home with him, and he talked all the way back to his place. By the time he got there, I changed my mind. I told him I had a herpes sore coming in, and I left. Ah! I try to get to the gym about 4 times a week. Yeah, you know, if you built up your chest and your arms and you lost a little bit of weight here, you'd look great. You want to look your best, right? You know what the sexiest part of you is? This line, right across your thigh, right here. So, can I take your number? You can pack your bags. I'll not have a queer living under my roof. I don't agree with homosexuals. We need to save our kids from homosexuality. Do whatever you can to stop homosexuality. Oh, Glenn, not Mary Hartman again. Why do you like this show, love? Are you attracted to her? She's so ugly.
I play all the characters at once. So some scenes have 6, 7 characters all talking to each other at once.
It is a bevy of interesting, well-defined characters.
The characters are all based on real people that happened in 1977. I wrote journals back then, and a lot of the play comes from my journals. And some of those characters you may already have heard of. The first scene is Mary Poppins and the 2 Banks children, Jane and Michael. I also play one of the characters from the Village People, the Indian from the Village People. And I play several characters from the movie The Boys in the Band. And Anita Bryant, famous homophobe. I sing a song, which I won't tell you the title of, but it's a sing-along. So,
and underneath that is one of the best disco soundtracks that I've heard in quite some time. So what you've just said and the music that you hear, there's something accessible and memorable. And if you weren't there the first time around, there's something jubilant about accessing those cultural references.
Yeah, people laugh all the time when they recognize a character or a song, or even the disco fashions I wore. Some guy came up to me, he says, "I wore those jeans too with the plastic pocket at the back. I had those." So yeah, it's very accessible from our generation. And it's, a history lesson served up in a great way for the younger generation. My favorite character to play, there are several. One of them is a guy called Ivan. He's got a bit of a lisp. He talks like this, and he's got a British accent. He's an outrageous sleep around. He has a revolving door in his apartment. People come and go. While I'm having a chat with him in bed, the phone rings 3 times, and it's a different hookup every time. So he's just hilariously funny to play.
Glenn, were you avoiding me at rehearsal last night? Well, it's just a second. Hello? Oh, hello, Stephen. Yes, I'd love to, but could we make it tomorrow instead? I just need to recharge my batteries, if you know what I mean. All right, Stephen, we'll see you tomorrow then. Bye. Oh, he's just another little friend of mine. Now, Glenn, why don't you shimmy over here? Oh, There it goes again. Sorry, it's busy as a beehive in here. Hello?
My favorite character, though, I think, to play is Dimitri. Dimitri is the lead character, Glenn's best friend, who is very dry-witted, very quick-witted, and has his own language. He has his own words for things and his own... he names people according to what they look like, or... He's just hilariously fun to play.
I'm Dimitri. Haven't I seen you before? Oh, that's right, humanities class. I knew I recognized you. So what do you think of our teacher, Miss Pierogi? Don't you think she looks like a witch? Oh, you dropped your book. The Front Runner. I've heard about this. It's a gay novel, isn't it? Aren't you nervous to carry this around with you? I see.
Secret to the success of this play is the talent of this man. He is an extraordinary craftsman. He has the ability to work physically, to work with accents in a way that makes my job easy. With that said, it's not easy. It is a tremendous challenge, but opportunity to see how one person can create a multi-character situation.
The play would not be anywhere near as effective as it is now without Clinton's incredible
Thank you.
input. Also, as a director, if I was acting it by myself, I would probably just go ba 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 ba. But that is boring. After one scene, you get really bored of that. But Clinton is a great director. He constantly is looking for what's the intention of each character at every moment. We keep breaking the rules and like, we haven't done that before, we're gonna try this. Some of the scenes I'm sitting in a chair and all the characters are kind of alive from the waist up, but my bottom half just stays in the chair. And that's a choice for that scene. And then another scene, I'm constantly walking. Each character is walking, talking, and we're all interacting physically. So Clinton, has done an amazing job and it's very, very inventive. And again, without him, the show would not be what it is.
Thank you.
I wrote this play because when I came out of the closet in 1977, I had the best time that you can imagine. The clubs, Montreal has always been a big club city, but in the 70s, it was a time of freedom and disco music was playing all the time. Like the disco music was kind of like the lifeblood of all the gay community. We all went out dancing. We all were sleeping around. At the time in 1977, there were no gay rights. There wasn't a lot of freedom as a gay person. But downtown Montreal, there was no homophobia. There was very little oppression. So it was just a great time. That's why I wrote the play. I wanted to commemorate this time, my time as a gay man, and the struggle I had to overcome, homophobia in the outskirts, in the heterosexual world, and to find my identity, as everyone does.
I wanted to direct the play first off because of the content. Of course, we've seen coming of age stories. Basically, it's a staple in gay fare. But what made Greg's play different for me was the celebration of the journey. Often with coming out stories, the central character has to be punished. There has to be turmoil. There has to be that moment when an audience cringes and goes, "Oh, I understand your pain," and isn't that terrible? The viewer almost has to be punished along with the central character in order to come out. What I loved about Greg's play is, not to say that there isn't a balance of purpose and drama and comedy, but it is a celebration of our identity, and so that made it unique for me. Also, working with him was a benefit, was something that drew me to the project.
Back then, there was no gay representation in the media. There were no gay role models. There were no couples that you saw holding hands on the street. I mean, you just couldn't, because if you showed any affection, you could be beaten up. Mm-hmm. I mean, like I said before, there was no homophobia, but I would never put my arm around someone because I'd be terrified. But now, we've got gays in almost every TV show. Mm-hmm. There are fantastic gay movies with really positive gay characters. Schitt's Creek on CBC is unique because the gay characters are just gay in a small town, and there's no homophobia, there's no racism, they live just like a totally happy life. So sex in the 70s. Again, 1977 was right in the middle of like the best time the best time in the world for gay people, because we've had Stonewall in 1969. Up until then, there was nothing. There was no freedom. Everyone was in the closet, hiding. And then the 70s, everybody was out having sex, cruising. It was a competitive sport. And then 1981 on, it was the era of AIDS, and everything stopped. So I was very fortunate to be part of it was the continuation of the sexual revolution. I remember going out, it was not very difficult to find connection with somebody. Basically in Montreal, you look somebody in the eye, and if you're attracted, that's it. You can go home right away.
Magical.
Magical. And then, in the 80s, it was a horrible, terrible time. Clinton, I'm sure you've lost friends. I lost many friends and actors, people in the theater.
Absolutely. And speaking about, developing sexually and who we are and how we love and how we have sex, the 80s did change everything. But I also look at, because that was my era, that it changed things for the good as well. We became better communicators with one another. We became plugged into what was happening. We became political in a way that the 70s didn't really need. The 70s kind of let go of it because it was about the party. So I feel that the 80s was kind of a combination of those two things. Absolutely, there was a tremendous amount of loss, but determining who we were in that decade meant something. What do you think was the biggest loss from the 70s, that culture of the 70s, how people were connecting? What do you perhaps mourn the most or miss the most?
I miss the freedom. We didn't think about using condoms. There was no fear. There was just no fear. Like the worst thing is like just finding someone and being with someone you're attracted to and who wanted to be with you. Usual things. But
it's so funny in the play Mario. I mean, the discussion about STIs is almost comical between Glenn and Mario. It's joked about, and it's Mario says, "Oh, don't worry about it. It's nothing." Which to me was such an eye-opener, right? But, even 10 years later, not only AIDS, but everything carried so much weight. Everything had shame attached to it. And those two characters discuss it with, I mean, it's one of my favorite scenes because it's so funny. Yeah.
Mario he was much more active than I was. And so he had all kinds of, he had gonorrhea and lots of things, anal warts, which comes up in the play. But again, you just dealt with it and you moved on. But then in the 80s, like people stopped going out, they stopped having sex, people didn't have indiscriminate sex anymore. I mean, it stopped. Like people were using condoms, and they kind of did. It never really stopped, but people were more cautious and more worried, and then people were getting sick. And but like you said, it galvanized the gay community to fight. I mean, Reagan didn't mention the word AIDS for the first 5 years in office, I think it was. That was absolutely infuriating. And in order to get anything done, gays had to band together, and groups like ACT UP and groups like that, political groups, had to fight, go to government buildings and chain themselves up and make a huge rally and cry. And silence equals death was their the byline. But that galvanized the gay community. We came together, we bonded, and we gained a lot of rights. I mean, maybe that's why so much happened in the last 40 years. So many gay rights have been achieved. I never even thought ever I would see gay marriage. And now it's everywhere, even in the States. Yeah, things really have changed in the last 40 years. And I think it started with AIDS because we had to fight for what we needed.
I have to admit that the current state of gay is a bit of a mystery to me.
The whole world of Grindr and Scruff, like I've never gone on it. So, but from what I hear, I sound like a dinosaur. But from what I hear, people don't go to bars anymore. You just hook up and you flick until you find someone and you go over to their house and that's it. I mean, if we had that in the 70s, boy, things would have been so much easier, and you would have saved a lot of money, a lot of drinking. But then I wonder I wonder like where the gay community is now. Like our community was the bars and the bathhouses and the cafes. I mean, that's where we met. That's where dancing was, so crucial to our world.
I also believe that when we did those things, when we flirted and hit the bars and stumbled home drunkenly at 2 a.m, we were figuring out who we were. We were determining what our parameters were and the defining characteristics that were going to make us. I believe character is built. When you cruise someone in a bar and they go, "I'm not interested," that rejection actually helps you build character. It helps you walk away from the situation and go, "Ow, that hurts, but okay, I'm a big boy, I can rise above it." It's easy to hide behind our current social technology if you have low self-esteem, right? You can really be whoever you want. You can suffer in silence, and so there is I guess there's a safety there. I don't know how legit it is. The way in which we're communicating has shifted. I'm always trying to look at it through a positive lens because it's easy to get jaded about it. It's easy to judge it from afar. But I do have to recognize that we have fundamentally changed the way in which we are communicating with one another. And like anything else, like any other progress, that's good and bad. I just hope that there is the opportunity to continue building stronger individuals and stronger communities, even though we're using this to connect with one another. I hope, trying to remain optimistic.
There's something else that I'd like to address. Back in my day, back in the 70s, there was a lot of shame about being gay. You didn't have anyone, saying, "Hey, it's great to be gay. You're fantastic the way you are." Like when I grew up, my parents didn't want me to be gay, and my dad was pretty homophobic, very macho guy. I'm sure I'm saying the same. I'm depicting the same story that many people can relate to. So it was a real battle to fight what other people thought of me, but what I thought of myself. I mean, I took on my dad's homophobic behavior and attitudes. And as I said, I was sort of femme-phobic. I didn't want to come across as feminine. And I don't think, this is my belief, I don't think things have really changed that much today. We have all these rights, and people say, it's so great to be gay. I'm totally free and I'm open, and yet there's still a lot of drinking, drugs, indiscriminate sex, like just tons of escapism. And why? I mean, if we're all so comfortable, then why are we getting drunk, every single day? I mean, I'm a little bit out on a limb here, but I think we're still born with our parents going, "Please don't let my kid be gay." Even though things have changed and society is much more accepting, I think there's still a lot of shame, unfortunately. Maybe not as much as then, but I think that's something that is still there. There's still a lot of kids hanging committing suicide in high school. Yeah. They get bullied and they can't take it. And even though there are places to turn to, they may not know where to turn to. And it's, it hasn't, I mean, I just think there's a lot of connection to the way it used to be.
Well, we're living in interesting times, aren't we, where we've made a tremendous amount of progress. The folks that have come before us have forged that path for us, and yet people hate us for that progress. People are suspicious of our motives. They are jealous of our achievements. And so I can imagine that not only the self-doubt and the shame that comes along with it, that somehow we inherently earn or is passed on to us. Maybe it is genetic, I don't know. There is that outside influence of wanting to celebrate and yet still having to be safe and cautious, because hatred is being upheld as a right these days, and as a way in which to justify any kind of behavior. Hatred, of course, is disguised as, fair play or, family values. We've heard all of that before. So I can see why it's, looking at a young person these days, a young queer, going, whoa, not only am I defining who I am, overcoming the shame, but I have to be on guard. Not only from the outside, but even from inside our communities, because boy, oh boy, we've splintered in a pretty tremendous way, even over the last 15 years. We've splintered, and, all you have to do is look at, the 53 letters that represent our community to show that lots of people are trying to figure their deal out. I think it's easier, of course, to come out and be yourself and identify in any way that you want, more so now than ever before, and that's really exciting to me. The interesting dynamic is internally within the community. I mean, we're seeing generationally, we're seeing divide happen. We're refiguring out how to work with one another, how to listen to one another, and how to build with one another. So that is, although coming out and being able to have access to that is tremendous, there's yet another chore on our hands, which is, who the heck are we with one another again, right? We're back here again.
Yeah, back in the 70s, there was gay and lesbian and bi, and bi just meant, he's just figuring things out, he'll be gay soon. But as far as trans people, there was just a lot of drag queens is what I saw. The bars, there was a lot of drag performance in the bars. And many of those people could have been trans, I just wouldn't have known. We've come so far, and now trans issues are at the forefront, and thank God. And that we have to fight for trans issues and for gay people all over the globe. People can be killed for being gay in many countries. So that's where the fight is now.
What is it that you want to communicate with people who come to see the show from the creator's perspective?
Well, this is a show specific to my experience, but I think talking about showing people what my life was like and how I came out of the closet is a universal story, a universal theme. Everybody on the planet has to find who they are. It's a story of finding your own identity, of finding acceptance, love, of making a mark. And that's what I wanted to bring out in the play, is just this search for, and eventually at the end of the play, a kind of a triumph of finding who I am and who you are. And it's very moving, especially the last scene. There's a lot of self-acceptance by the end of the play, and self-esteem and celebration.
I think what you've done so skillfully is created a joyful vehicle. That's what makes this different, is that we walk away from this show feeling uplifted. It's also funny and accessible and filled with joy. It's meaningful, and yet it's a feel-good piece.
Come out to see Out at Buddies in Bad Times. It's on April 24th to May 5th. It's a 2-week run, And please come out and you'll have a great time.
Tickets are available through Buddies in Bad Times Theater.
And online. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Out the Play.